Hey, movie fans. You know how you're always asking us to deep dive into this movie or that movie?
Well, we heard you.
We did. So today, we're ditching the research papers and diving headfirst into a film a lot of you are curious about. It's called A Different Man. It came out this year.
Got my popcorn ready, you?
Let's do it. Always up for a good movie deep dive.
Perfect. Okay, so A Different Man. Where do we even start with this one?
Well, it's a fascinating blend of genres from what I've seen. We're talking drama, comedy, even a touch of sci-fi, at least according to the movie's page on TMDb.
Okay, so right off the bat, not your typical movie. Speaking of TMDb, they describe the plot like this. You ready for this? Our main character, Edward, is an aspiring actor. So far, so good, right? But he chooses to have this radical procedure, not just like, a little procedure. This is like full-on changes his entire appearance kind of procedure.
Wow. Seeing that right there, that just screams to those deep-seated anxieties we all have, right, about how we look. Like, how many times have you wished you could just, I don't know, hit the reset button on your appearance? It's like this film is holding up a mirror to that very human desire, that yearning for a do-over.
Yeah, and not just any mirror, right? This is like a funhouse mirror, maybe. Because TMDb specifically mentions this is all happening in New York City. And,
Yeah.
talk about a place where image feels important.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting, because TMDb calls this a dark comedy. So we're dealing with some pretty heavy themes, identity, societal pressures, the whole shebang, but then they're injecting humor into it, which I gotta say is a pretty tricky balance to strike.
Right. Because how else do you make a movie about a guy literally becoming a different man without a little bit of dark humor?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this intriguing premise, but what about the actors? And the director, of course. Let's talk about the man behind the mask, so to speak. We've got Sebastian Stan in the lead role.
Now that's some interesting casting right there. I mean, Sebastian Stan, Winter Soldier. From those Marvel films, to see him, someone known for those action roles, take on a character who's grappling with such a profound internal struggle, that's pretty cool.
It really is. Talk about a transformation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Sebastian Stan going deep, but then there's the director, Aaron Schimberg. I have to admit, the name's not ringing any bells for me.
And that's okay. If you're deep in those blockbuster films, you might not know Schimberg's work yet. He's been more in the indie film world.
Ah, okay. So Indie Darling goes mainstream, maybe.
This could be his breakout, yeah. A chance to explore those complex themes, but with a wider audience.
I love that. And he's not coming in empty-handed either. Renee Reinsve is part of the cast. And I have to say, huge fan of Worst Person in the World, so I have high hopes for this one.
That's a great call. Rensby is known for taking on these really meaty roles about identity, finding yourself, that kind of thing. And she brings something really special to the screen. I'm so curious to see what she does in this film because it feels like a different kind of movie than we've seen her in before.
Definitely. Okay, so we've got a possibly huge role for Stan, a director ready for the spotlight, and an indie darling bringing her unique talent.
Yeah,
This is already shaping up to be something you don't want to miss, right?
it is. But before we hand out any awards, we have to talk about that user review you found.
Right. Let's dive into that. We won't spoil anything major, but this CinemaSurf review gives us a glimpse into the movie's heart.
Mm.
Okay, so CinemaSurf, they start off by painting this picture of Edward, and he's living a pretty isolated life in the city. He's dealing with his facial disfigurement, which, let's be real, not exactly the glamorous life you think of when you hear aspiring actor.
Not quite, and that's where Renee Rain's character Ingrid comes in, right? I mean, we're talking about a movie with Sebastian Stan, but honestly, Ransby is the one I'm most excited about.
I'm with you. She always brings it.
So she plays Ingrid, who's a writer, and get this, according to the review, she actually befriends Edward.
Wow, okay. That's kind of unexpected.
Right, like where's this going? And it gets better. She ends up offering him a role in a play she's working on.
And that's interesting. It almost makes you think she sees something in him, something beneath the surface, that maybe even he doesn't recognize in himself.
Absolutely. Like, she's not at all bothered by the way he looks. It really challenges all those societal norms we were talking about before.
Totally. But so he's finding a friend. He might even be finding some confidence, but let's not forget, he's still going through all these radical procedures that are changing his face.
Right. And this is where the review takes a turn because CinemaSurf is like, okay, so he's getting what he thought he wanted, BUT. And the big BUT is no one recognizes him anymore.
Oh, no. So he got the transformation, but at what cost, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like he went through this whole metamorphosis, but instead of becoming this beautiful butterfly, he's a stranger to everyone, even to himself, probably.
Can you imagine going through all that and ending up even more lost than before? That's brutal.
And this is where that dark comedy element probably comes in. Because how else do you handle a story like that, right?
Yeah, it's got to be dark humor. So, okay, it sounds like we've got this really intriguing setup, but the thing is, CinemaSurf gives the film a 70%, which, good, but not amazing.
Yeah, and that's always so interesting to me. Those scores that are kind of in the middle.
Right. Like, what does that even mean?
I think it means they're trying to do something different. Like, it's not a clear-cut, happy or sad kind of movie. It's messy. It's asking questions maybe it doesn't have answers to. And honestly, I think that's where the good stuff is, you know?
I totally agree. This isn't some cookie-cutter story. It's more complex than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the basic plot, but I want to go back to those keywords we mentioned earlier from the TMDB page. New York City, identity, transformation, dark comedy. What do you make of all that?
I mean, that's a recipe for something interesting, for sure. First, you've got the backdrop of New York City, which, for a story about identity, there's no better place.
I mean, New York can chew you up and spit you out if you let it.
Exactly. It can be exciting, alluring, but also incredibly isolating, especially if you're already feeling lost, like you're searching for something.
Totally. And then on top of that, you layer in this concept of transformation, which, like, after reading this CinemaSurf review, it's clearly operating on multiple levels. Like, yeah, Edward's face is changing, but it's more than that. It's how that physical change impacts who he is, deep down.
Exactly, which is kind of the point, right?
Yeah,
Because we're not just talking about a guy getting plastic surgery. It's about how our outsides and our insides, how they match up or don't, and then throw in the dark comedy element. And honestly, I think that's how you explore those layers in a way that makes you think, but also makes you feel something.
Absolutely. This isn't a pity party. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of that old saying, be careful what you wish for,
About 100%.
Because Edward wants this different face, but by the end,
Yeah.
my guess, what he really needs is a different way of seeing himself.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's what I'm most interested in seeing, honestly. Can Schimberg, the director, can he pull that off? Can he make a film that goes beyond just the surface level, the whole look at this guy's face thing, and really dig into what's going on inside Edward? Because that's the difference between a movie that's just interesting to watch and a movie that stays with you.
Okay, I'm sold. We've got the actors, we've got a director with something to prove, and a story that's asking some big questions. But before we totally jump on the A Different Man bandwagon, there's one more thing we have to talk about. This whole connection between acting and transformation, right? The review touched on it, but it felt like there was more to unpack there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Edward's drawn to acting, a profession where you literally become someone else, even if it's just for a little while.
It's true. He's already interested in changing how he looks even before the surgery.
Exactly. So is this whole radical procedure thing, is it more than just wanting a different face? Is it him trying to achieve something through surgery that he couldn't find on stage? Maybe he thought changing how he looked would make him a better actor.
Whoa. That is a really interesting way to think about it. And it brings us back to those key words, doesn't it? Identity, transformation. It's like this film is making us ask what true transformation actually means.
Right. Is it all about the outside, how we present ourselves, or is it something deeper, something that starts and ends on the inside?
Big questions. And I have a feeling that's where the dark comedy part comes in. Like, can you imagine the awkward encounters, the misunderstandings that come with Edward having a new face but still feeling insecure? Be kind of funny, but also kind of sad at the same time, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like that old saying, but in reverse. He got what he wished for, but it might not be what he wanted.
And maybe what he really needed this whole time wasn't a new face, but a new way of seeing himself.
100%. And that's the make or break thing for me, honestly. Can Schimberg, the director, can he pull that off? Can he make a film that goes deeper than just looking at Edward's face and actually gets into the messiness of Edward's journey? Because if he can, well, then it's not just an interesting movie. It's a film that really makes you think.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Intriguing plot, solid actors, director with a point to prove. What's the final verdict? Should our listeners add A Different Man to their watch lists?
Well, I'd never want to tell anyone what to do, but based on what we've talked about today, it seems like this movie has a lot to offer. It's going to stay with you, make you ask some tough questions about who you are, what society expects, that sort of thing. It's not just a story about a guy changing his appearance. It's about something way more universal. that need to connect with people, to figure out who you are in a world that puts so much emphasis on looks.
Well said. And on that note, we're calling it a wrap on this deep dive into A Different Man. We started with you wanting to know more about this movie, and look where we ended up, huh? Talking about some pretty heavy stuff.
That's the best kind of deep dive, if you ask me.
Me too. And remember, sometimes the best journeys, in movies and in life, they start with just one question. So keep asking those questions, and we'll be here to deep dive into the answers with you. Until next time, happy watching.